On this episode of the African Five-A-Side podcast, we're going to take a quick look at what happened at the football at the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. And also, we are on the brink of another footballing season. I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's true. So let's get into all of that and dig in. Hello and welcome to another episode of the African Five-A-Side podcast. My name is Maher Mizahi. I'm your host. And as always, this podcast is brought to you by africasaCountry.com. Let's talk about the Olympic Games, the Paris Olympic Games. 2 months of intense, non-stop sporting activity, and all of a sudden, it's gone. And you look at the calendar and you realize that you're a few weeks from, the Scholastic New Year beginning, and that summer is almost over, and that football is on the brink again. On one hand, I feel like summer's flown by, and that I'm not ready to get into another footballing season, but it's upon us and we don't have any other choice. We have to make do it, we have to watch it, we have to cover it. That's what our job is, right? But I do think that, the Americans do things a little bit better with their major leagues, whether that be American football or American basketball, hockey. I don't think 2 months is enough time. I think it would be better if we extended it to 3-4 months, but unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the trend that, the governing bodies in world football are trending towards. It seems to be quite the opposite, that we're increasing more and more competitions, more and more football. Don't think that's a good thing for the players, and I don't even think that's a good thing for the fans. I think a lot of us are being burnt out. Let me know if you feel that way, but in any case, we're back here talking about it, so they probably know better than us, right? So about the football, we had 2 African teams in the semifinals, and they ended up facing each other in the third place match. Pretty good result, if you ask me. Prior to the tournament, I didn't think that any side would make it that far. Perhaps the only exception to that would be the Moroccan side. I'm really, really impressed by the quality of their squad at the under-23 level. I already think that their senior team is the best squad in Africa on paper. And when you look at the talent that they have at the under-23 level, you realize that that pool of talent is not going to be ending anytime soon. It's not shoring up. I was hoping that Mali and Guinea would do a little bit better. They tend to do well in youth tournaments. They crashed out disappointingly, I thought. And Egypt did better than I expected them to. Considering that many of their players, even though they're under 23 players, they're professional, many of them don't even start at their clubs. Or I wouldn't say they're leaders at their clubs or very important players at their clubs, So I thought Egypt took I don't want to say mediocre squad, but because there's a lot of talent there. But it wasn't probably the best squad that Egypt could have taken to the Summer Olympic Games, and they got pretty far, discounting that 6-0, was it 6-0 or 7-0? 6-0 loss to Morocco in the semifinals. I saw somebody said that an Egyptian person online said, thank God that Morocco's king is Mohammed VI and not Mohammed VII, otherwise it would have been 7-0. So it's the kind of corny but funny Egyptian humor that you can hear on a regular basis. But the main takeaway for me at the football for the African countries at the Olympics is that Egypt and Morocco are going to be very happy because they have some serious problems at the senior level, and it seems that they have found solutions for their senior national team in the Olympic teams. So, for example, Morocco have been looking for a striker, in my opinion, for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer than that. They've never really had, not never, but it's been a while since they've had a very good, consistent, potent striker. Youssef N'Nesyri can do a good job. He's very physical, can run around, good in the air. He scored a lot of important goals. But I don't know if you can expect him to consistently convert easy chances all the time. And I think he can be a very frustrating player at times as well. And so Morocco used Soufiane Rahimi. He's one of the players that was not under the age of 23. He's one of the overage players. A player that I think on the African continent we know very well from his time at Raja Casablanca. He's always scored important goals in semifinals and finals. Maybe when we thought he was going to move to Europe, instead he goes to the UAE. But even there, I believe with his club Al Jazeera, he scored some incredible goals. He's been the MVP of the Asian Champions League. Last season, he's also scored goals in the Asian Champions League final. So very clutch, and he scored a goal in every single game at these Olympics. So I think Sofiane Rahimi could be a solution for Morocco as a striker. His movement was great, his link-up play was fantastic, and he was uh, deadly whenever he had a half chance to score. And he even converted his penalties. So that's one thing that Morocco can look at their participation from the Olympics and say, hey, we can apply this to our senior national team. The next thing is just simply the fact that, yeah, their pool of talent at the under 23 level is unreal. You look at the right winger, Elias Akhomesh, former Barcelona prospect, I believe, currently at Villarreal, just such good, close, tight control, good burst when he cuts in from the right wing on his left foot. Somebody that could replace Hakim Ziyech probably in the next year or two, in my opinion. For blanking on his name, the kid in Belgium who was at the World Cup. I'll get back to it. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. But Amir Richardson in midfield, who's on the verge of signing with Fiorentina, currently playing for Stade de Reims in France. Oh, he was one of my favorite players to watch this summer, including the Euros. Tall, lanky midfielder, never rushed under pressure. Whenever teams were pressing him, he always finds a way to throw in a body feint and get away from a player. Very press resistant, gets up and down the pitch. Could be a very good box-to-box midfielder if we threw football back to the 1990s, right? Besides him, like Oussama Al-Azouzi played some defense, even though he's like also a midfielder. Lots of very good players. I'm just the one player that I'm not convinced by is Abdesamad Zazuli as Abde. I just think he's too hot and cold. At times you think he's the next big thing in Moroccan football, and then at times you're thinking like, man, what is this guy doing on the pitch? I hate this guy. So he's the one player that I don't feel too hot about, but everybody else on the pitch I thought was fantastic. And a shout out to especially the three overage players, Rahimi, who we spoke about, Ashraf Hakimi, the captain, the right back from Paris Saint-Germain, who was grade A throughout the tournament, and then also the goalkeeper Munir Al Qajwi, who by the way was Morocco's starting goalkeeper before Yassine Bounou emerged as a world-class goalkeeper, and who was always, I thought, very solid and consistent for Morocco. He never really got a chance because all of a sudden he got bypassed by a world-class goalkeeper, and now all of a sudden, this tournament comes, it presents an opportunity to him, and he gets to show that he's still the same consistent goalkeeper, and he had a good performance. Egypt have one solution that I think that they can apply, and it's just one player, Ibrahim Adel. I watched Egypt's number 10, Ibrahim Adel. First of all, I believe he was the MVP of the under 23 AFCON, where these teams qualified to make it to the Olympics. And then at the Olympics, in Algeria, we have an expression, we say somebody reeks of football. They stink of football. Like it just comes off of their aura, their being, it just seeps through their pores. That's what Ibrahim Adel is kind of like. You just watch him play and it's wow. Like inside of the foot, outside of the foot, great vision, beautiful touch on every single one of his passes. He has a great body feint where he goes left and he pushes the ball outside of with the outside of his right boot and cuts inside, because he tends to play as a left winger, even though I think he could probably be more of a central midfielder. But he's really good at cutting in with that body feint. And he scored some very, very important goals. So I believe against Spain, the eventual winners. So Ibrahim Adel, the reason why I think he could be a good solution for Egypt is because he's a good ball progressing midfield. And anybody that's watched Egypt over the last 3 AFCONs knows that their main problem was that their attacking line was too isolated. Mohamed Salah was too isolated. So for them to have Ibrahim Adel as a possible solution, I think many Egyptians are going to be happy about that. So let's turn the page on the Olympics, and let's look at football. I to be honest, when I get to this period of time, I try to shut my brain off over the summer and not pay attention to what's happening in terms of transfers and football, and try to focus on family and taking a break. And then I get to 1 week before the season starts and I realize I don't know who transferred where. I don't know what's been happening. I haven't been following. It turns out that Bordeaux from France have dissolved and they're no longer a club. I got to catch up with everything, right? So I'm all of a sudden stuffing myself with football news. But what I did was I went to each of the top 5 European leagues and I looked at the list of transfers in and out. And I tried to find, 5 interesting transfers, 5 players that I thought could have a very good year and could break out, from being a promising player to either a good player or a good player that could become a superstar player. And I picked out 5 names. And the first one is actually a 2-in-1. So it's Brighton Hove Albion, attacking midfielders, Yankuba Minte from the Gambia and Ibrahim Osman from Ghana. I'm very, very excited to watch both of these players. Yankuba Minte, formerly on the books of Newcastle, spent the last season on loan at Feyenoord. I believe he scored 10 goals with Feyenoord, but he was very good at Feyenoord. Now, I'm always skeptical when teams are good in the Eredivisie because I've seen players be very, very hot in the Eredivisie, and then when they get to the Premier League, they just fizzle out. I remember a striker named Alfonso Alves. I remember at Feyenoord a few years ago, John Guidetti, from Manchester City, went on loan to Feyenoord, killed it in the Eredivisie, and then never did anything in the Premier League, really. So, always a little bit skeptical, always want to see it, in the Premier League first. But Yankuba Minte has been great, the Gambian midfielder, winger, I should say. On so far at Brighton Hove Albion during preseason. I believe they had a friendly, I want to say, against Villarreal, where he had 2 assists and a goal. And what really impresses me about him is that he's been putting in a lot of effort. And remember, this year, Brighton, they don't have De Zerbi anymore. They brought in a new coach who's just 31 years old. I don't know what they're going to look like. So that's one of the things where there's a question mark about these two players. I don't know the style of play that Brighton's going to be like. It seems like they didn't change it up too much. It seems like the transfer strategy is still in place. But the fact that he puts in so much effort in terms of pressing and closing, the opposing players down and sacrificing himself for the team, I think that's a very good omen. And the fact that he's been consistent in front of goal is also a very good omen. Now he has, they have the Japanese winger Mitoma on the other side. They also have Simon Adingra, who was the star of the African Cup of Nations when Cote d'Ivoire won it at the beginning of the year. Feels like that was 3 years ago, but so the fact that they have, those two wingers, that makes me hesitate a little bit. The fact that they have Ibrahim Osman, who we're going to talk about in a second, they have a lot of players in those areas, so a little bit of, drop in form, and all of a sudden you can find yourself on the bench, and that scares me a little bit. But Minte was good at the AFCON, very talented player, a lot of pace, a lot of humility, a lot of hard work, a lot of talent and skill. And so I'm excited to see how he does. I think he's going to have a very good season, a good first season in the Premier League where he's going to establish himself. He's not going to be a star, but I think maybe he can get, 5-6 goals, maybe 6-7 assists in his first year. Ibrahim Osman, I think, has a way higher ceiling than Minte, which is saying something. He's one of the latest Ghanaian players out of the Right to Dream Academy line, right, with Kamaldeen Sulemana, Mohamed Kudus, so many different players that came out of there. Ernest Nuama, and this is the latest. And you watch him. To be fair, I haven't watched him in a full match yet. I watched him on YouTube. His pace is lightning quick. That guy is fast. Now the thing is, you have like a player like Kamaldeen Sulemana, who was the same, and I think his problem is decision making in the final third and end product. And I hope Ibrahim Osman is not going to be the same way. So that's what they need to work on. If they can work on, getting him to sacrifice himself, kind of like Yankuba Minte does, where he gives himself to the collective and works within Brighton's system, and then polishes up some of that end product, I think Ibrahim Osman can be, in my opinion, one of the best African players on the continent. Just because his pace and his dribbling, that speed is so difficult to defend against. Very few players are that naturally gifted. So those two are a 2-in-1 package that I'm looking out for, is Yankuba Minte and Ibrahim Osman from Brighton. The second player that I'm looking forward to sort of seeing if he can break out is Shadi Riyad, the Moroccan defender who signed for Crystal Palace for, I believe, 15 million euros. I believe he spent the last season on loan at Real Betis. And with him, it's an interesting one because he's a defender who can play as a central defender, maybe as a left back, maybe on the left side of a back three. But he's a very Spanish defender, in my opinion. Like, when I watch him, I see somebody that is on the ball technically fantastic, can play the ball out, very well. And Palace, they have, Anderson, who is one of the best passers from those defensive positions. And so I think he could be a good complement in that sense, if Palace are looking to really play the ball out from their defenders. I just don't know if he has the size, the strength, and more importantly, the nastiness to attack, the Erling Haaland or Darwin Núñez, or to go up and fight against them and really try to bully them. I don't think he does, but I hope he proves me wrong. So that's one where I'm going to watch, because don't forget, they have Marc Guéhi as well, who was great with England at the Euros. They have Joachim Andersen. So I don't even know if he's going to start initially, but I would love it to see him, establish himself, start matches for Crystal Palace, develop that kind of physicality. And if he does, I mean, Morocco just, they have another great left-footed center half on their books after Naif Agard and a few years ago, Roman Saiz. Let's go to Germany, where there are two very interesting transfers, in my opinion. Serhou Guirassy. Serhou Guirassy is a player that never scored more than 12, 13, maybe 14 goals in France. And then last year, he scores 30 and 30, and all of a sudden is one of the biggest names in world football. One of the hottest strikers in world football, I should say. And so with Guirassy, it's one of those things where it's like, was that a flash in the pan? Was that just a purple streak, a purple patch? Or is Serhou Guirassy at the age of 27, 28 going to be one of the world's hottest strikers for 4 or 5 years in a row now? Because some people are just late bloomers, right? Some players are just late bloomers, and it's difficult to predict. It's difficult to know. What I would say is that I got a chance to watch a lot of Guirassy over the last year, not just with his club, but also with the Ghanaian national team. And I thought that he was one of those players. I get skeptical when a striker just taps in, goals that are made up for him, because then you could say, well, you put this guy on a team that doesn't create, and he's going to struggle, and he's not going to score 30 and 30. But with Guirassy, with Guinea, one thing that, even though he was injured a lot at the AFCON, one thing that I've been impressed with, in the March international window, for example, he really has taken on a leadership role. He's the one that's willing Guinea to a lot of their goals and a lot of their victories. It seems like he's taken on a lot of leadership. He wants to be that kind of player. And I think he's going to have that success at Dortmund. So, I think about like Anthony Modeste, for example, who was at Dortmund as well, who was at Al Ahly last year. That's a player that, was kind of like that, scored 12 goals over here, then 6 goals, and then 18 goals. And then you don't really know if you can invest and throw your hat in and say, no, this guy is a world-class striker. And then all of a sudden, he goes to Cologne and he scores more than 20, 25 goals. And I think, is this the same thing with Guirassy? But I don't. I really think that at Dortmund, with Nick Füllkrug gone, I think he's going to score more than 20 goals. That's my prediction for him this next summer. Another player in Germany, Algerian international Mohamed Amin Amoura. This is a player that was one of the most effective players in terms of goal contributions to minutes in Europe last season. He started at Royal Union Saint-Gilloise on the bench. And every time he would come in, he would score, give an assist. And then he ends up as a striker, scores so many goals. His pace, like Ibrahim Osman that we spoke about, his pace is almost indefensible. If he starts running at you, don't even try to jockey him and corral him one way or another. Turn around and start running the other way. Start running to your goalkeeper until you close the space, because he's going to get behind you. And so he's a player that has come out. I watched him in his professional debut in Algeria in 2019 to 20. So he's a player that's really dear to my heart, and I really, no, it was 2021 maybe, or 22. It was a match Sétif against Borj Bouaririj, and he scored 2 goals. And I was like, I asked the guy beside me, I was like, man, who is that kid? He's like, oh, his nickname is Electricity. He's playing for the reserves. He's really fast, really good. And he just kept on growing and growing and growing. And he's done great with the Algerian national team and his time in Belgium. And now he's got himself a transfer to Wolfsburg. So Mohamed Amin Amoura had a really good preseason as well. I'm predicting he gets at least 15 goal contributions this season, between goals and assists. I just want to see if they're going to play him as a winger or as a striker, because he is quite short. So I don't think he can lead a line if you need him to, hold the ball up at all. But could be good as a second striker or as a winger. So I think Mohamed Amin Amoura, 15 to 20 goal contributions in his debut season in the Bundesliga. Finally, a player that we've spoken about so much on this channel is Mohamed Lamine Camara from Senegal, a player that we saw explode at the Chan, a player that we saw, at the under-20 AFCON, at the under-17 one, I believe, as well. No, not the under-17, under-20 and at the Chan as well. Fantastic player. All-action midfielder, signs to Monaco for 10 million euros. I'm sure Generation Foot got a cut of that, and I'm sure Metz have kept a sell-on clause, because this is a player that, like Pape Matar Sarr, can become one of the best players in the top 5 European league very, very soon. So I'm not going to talk too much about him. If you want to see more of Lamine Camara, go on this channel, go to the older videos, and you're going to find so much of him. He can do everything. And he was great at the AFCON as well, one of the best young players there. So those are 5 African players transfers that I think are going to be great this season. Yeah, I'm just gonna close the video with that. So thanks for tuning in to another African Five-A-Side podcast. Still slowly getting into the rhythm of this new season. I think by September you're gonna be seeing some noticeable changes to this channel. So thanks again for listening, and we'll speak soon. Peace.